Hello and welcome to Solaris University. In this video, we'll show you how to actuate an access control panel using XPressFreedom. Now, we assume in this video that you have Express Entry installed, which you see in the middle of my screen here, that you have your handheld installed and connected, which you see on the far right of my screen. XPressFreedom works just like any other access control board, and we're able to link into pretty much every access control panel by sending a weekend signal just like any other card reader on the wall. Now on my screen here, you can see our connection. We're able to connect a reader for an entry and an exit door. So we have two reader entries here and here. That is here and here. So in this demonstration, we'll be connecting just one of the reader entries into the panel. So to send a weekend signal and let the panel know who is coming in through the door. And here we have our power source. Here you connect a 5 to 24 volt power into our XPressFreedom board. And right here you connect an Ethernet port, and I'll show you how that is. Here on the screen you see our Ethernet port right here, and this would give access to the network to our Freedom board. Remember that the Freedom board has to be connected to the same network as your handheld reader, but it doesn't necessarily have to be on the same network as the access control panel. The communication between our board and the panel is directly through that weekend signal and through the relay communication on the receiving end. Now, in terms of the IP address, our Freedom board can either receive IP address through DHCP, or you can set a static IP address and give it to the board to communicate into your network. Now, if it's a DHCP, beside the IP address here, you see a D, and in our case, we have assigned a static IP address, and that's why you can see an S indicating that this IP address is static. Remember that this address, in this case 10.10.4.22, is what you assign to Express Entry, and that will be used by the reader to communicate to this Freedom board. Now, in terms of connection, please ensure that you connect the relay sense terminal of our Freedom board directly to the normally open terminal of your access control panel, and our ground terminal of our Freedom board is connected to the COM terminal of your access control panel. Now, our relay sense is pulled high internally. That is, the control input is connected to the 5 volts power input of our board. So it's pulled high, and then when the relay is thrown, the relay sense goes to ground, and I is pulled low. It reads 0 volts, and that is how we know that there is a state change from the access control panel. So I'll show you this and how this works in the next slide. So you see here that our relay is connected through a pull-up resistor directly to the 5 volts input, and that is because this switch is open, and once this switch is closed, which you see in the next slide, that is now connected and bridged down to ground, so it reads low. So once that state change happens, we know that there is a valid read or a state change from the access control panel. Now, if there's no change, we're sensing, that's why we call it relay sense, that relay, we're taking a look at the relay for a certain amount of time to see if there's no state change. And if nothing happens in that amount of time, then we know that nothing happened on the access control panel, and then we send you a signal saying that there is no valid read or the card is rejected. And this is, in summary, how we're able to know what happens on the access control panel and give you some feedback on a handheld reader. Now, this is a general summary of what happens when you send a card transaction. So first, we receive a signal from the handheld. The handheld will send a badge via the Ethernet, which the Freedom board receives from here. And the next thing that happens is that we send that weekend output to the access control panel. Then the access control panel would make its decision and decide if that is an access granted or an access denied, if the badge is valid or invalid. And then if it's valid, it will trigger its relay and close the relay to ground, which then activates our own relay, and then we know that there is a successful transaction. When that happens, XPressFreedom will now send a transaction back to the handheld reader that tells you that there is a valid transaction. Remember that if there's an invalid transaction, we wait for about 2 seconds, as in this case as configured, and if there is no state change, we now send you a signal on the handheld letting you know that that access is denied. Now what you can see on my left here is a view of the internal configuration of the Freedom. You can simply browse your Freedom board by going on the browser and type in the IP address. Now this is all the parameters that are configured on our Freedom board. Remember that we can see S beside the IP address, meaning that it is static. And you see the IP address here, 10.10.4.22. And you can see that we're using the relay sense as configured here, and that we're waiting. The relay timeout is 2 seconds. You can configure all of this to whatever it is that you want in your own application. Now, the next thing you want to do is to activate that settings on XPressEntry. So let's go into the settings of the handheld reader, go into settings, and under reader profiles, go into handheld functionality, and then let's select enable Freedom and hit save. Now the section of Freedom is also disabled by default, so we can go into add edit display here, and we need to say show Freedom settings here and hit save. And then now we need to go to the handheld reader and configure it to point to that Freedom board. So let's go into add edit info and select readers. My reader is called XBID 200. And under the IP address, I want to key in that IP address, in my case 10.10.4.22. And remember that we're using the relay sense, so we'll enable the relay sense here and hit save. Now the next thing you want to do on your handheld is to switch your handheld into the Freedom mode. So let's go into the switch mode and select Freedom mode. Now remember that our handheld connects directly to the Freedom board, so all transactions are sent to the Freedom board, and from the Freedom board sent to the access control panel, where decisions are made that triggers the relay and lets us know if it's an access granted, or if there's nothing, we know that it's an access denied. Now once you're connected to your Freedom board, you see a prompt at the bottom of the screen saying Freedom board found, and now you can start to present transactions to your handheld reader. Let's read a valid read and see what happens. Now remember that once you have a valid transaction, we will receive an access granted on our device, letting you know that that transaction went through on the access control panel. Now I'm going to try a bad read to see how that works. Remember that we wait for about 2 seconds to know if the access control panel has done nothing, and then you get an access denied that lets you know that that transaction was denied. If you remember in my last screen, you can see that I had the picture of the user, and that is because I had imported the card numbers and the user's pictures into XPressEntry. You can do that if you want to see pictures on your XPressEntry device, but remember that the transaction still goes through the Freedom board and through the access control panel, and not through XPressEntry in this case. Remember that XPressFreedom can be used in various applications. You can use your handheld reader in any location to authenticate through your existing access control without going through XPressEntry at all. It is very useful and very flexible in all applications. Now this brings an end to the demonstration of this feature. Please feel free to reach out to us at helpdesk@Telarus.com for any technical queries, or sales@Telarus.com for any product inquiries. Thank you.